In a small apartment in the suburbs of Boston, Rachel Hamilton sat at her laptop in the afternoon sunlight. It had been 5 years since she'd gone independent as a freelance graphic designer. Today, she was working on revisions for a logo design for a small local cafe chain. The quiet life of living alone was comfortable for her. It wasn't that she'd never longed for marriage, but she was satisfied with her current environment where she could focus on work at her own pace. Around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. Frowning at the unexpected visitor, Rachel checked the intercom screen. There stood her sister Emily, holding the hand of her 7-year-old son Jacob. Emily's expression lacked its usual brightness, and she looked somehow exhausted. "Emily? What's wrong?" Rachel asked as she opened the door. "Rachel, I'm sorry for coming by so suddenly," Emily's voice was shaking. "Could you watch Jacob for just a little while? It'll really be just a short time." Rachel was puzzled by Emily's condition. She normally never visited without calling ahead. Emily was a meticulous person who planned everything carefully. Married for 10 years to her husband Michael, she seemed to dote on Jacob, whom they'd been blessed with, and appeared to have built an ideal family. "Of course. But what's wrong? Did something happen?" I'm fine. I just have some urgent business." Emily hurriedly placed her hand on Jacob's shoulder. "Jake, be a good boy at your aunt's, okay?" Jacob nodded silently. Her nephew, who usually showed a friendly smile, seemed somehow listless today. In his small hands, he clutched his favorite teddy bear tightly. "Emily, are you really okay? You look pale." Rachel reached out to touch Emily's cheek. "I'm really fine." Emily stepped back. "I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. Please." With that, Emily gave Jacob a quick kiss and hurried down the stairs. Rachel watched her sister's retreating figure while feeling a small anxiety in her chest. Emily's behavior was clearly not normal. Her clothing was also uncharacteristically casual jeans and a sweatshirt, unlike her usual careful attention to her appearance. "Jake, are you hungry?" Rachel looked down at her nephew. "Yes, a little," Jacob answered in a small voice. Rachel headed to the kitchen and took juice from the refrigerator. She also got Jacob's favorite chocolate cookies from the shelf and put them on a plate. While she enjoyed spending time with her nephew, she couldn't stop worrying about Emily's condition. "Where did Mommy go?" Rachel asked casually. Jacob shrugged while nibbling on a cookie. "I don't know. But she said it was a secret from Daddy." Those words deepened Rachel's anxiety. Was there some problem in Emily and Michael's marriage? However, on the surface, the two seemed happy. Michael was a serious man who worked as a manager at a local construction company and appeared to care about his family. Evening came without any contact from Emily. Rachel tried calling her sister's cell phone several times, but either it was turned off or it didn't even ring. She made a simple dinner with Jacob and spent time watching cartoons on TV. Even after 8 o'clock, Emily hadn't returned, and Rachel's worry only grew. "Jake, it looks like you'll be staying here tonight," Rachel gently said to her nephew. Jacob nodded without seeming particularly surprised. It was as if he'd known from the beginning that this would happen. Rachel prepared a bed for Jacob in the guest bedroom while continuing to think about what on earth was happening to Emily. The next morning, Rachel woke up early. While hearing Jacob's breathing from the next room, she tried calling her sister's cell phone again. But just like the night before, either it was turned off or it didn't even ring. The clock showed 7 in the morning. When Jacob woke up, Rachel prepared breakfast for him. Pancakes and bacon, and orange juice. She made breakfast remembering Jacob's favorites, but Jacob didn't seem to have much appetite. "Jake, are you okay? Does your stomach hurt?" Rachel asked worriedly. "No. When is Mommy coming back?" Jacob asked in a small voice. "Soon. She's probably just too busy to call." Rachel smiled at him, but she herself couldn't feel confident in those words. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rang. Rachel hurriedly picked up the receiver, but it wasn't Emily on the other end, it was her husband Michael. "Rachel, good morning. Is Emily there?" Michael's voice lacked its usual gentleness and seemed to contain some irritation. No, she just came to drop off Jacob yesterday and left right away. Michael, have you been in touch with Emily? That's the thing, she hasn't come home since yesterday evening. Her cell phone doesn't work either. Do you have any idea where she might have gone? A bad feeling ran through Rachel's chest. Yesterday she said she had urgent business, but I couldn't ask for details. Michael, did something happen? Is there some problem between you two? No, nothing in particular. It's just that Emily's been acting a little strange lately. Nervous, you could say. Michael paused before continuing. If you hear from her, let me know right away. After hanging up, Rachel became even more anxious. Emily not coming home all night was something that had never happened before. She was a responsible mother who extremely disliked leaving Jacob alone. In the afternoon, Rachel decided to visit Emily's house with Jacob. About a 20-minute drive away, in a corner of a residential neighborhood, was Emily's family's house. Michael should have been at work. Rachel used her spare key to enter the house. The house was organized as usual, but looking closely at Emily's personal belongings, there were several concerning points. Some of the cosmetics she usually used were missing from the bathroom counter, and several outfits seemed to be gone from the closet. It gave the impression that she had prepared for a short trip. It smells like Mommy, Jacob murmured, sitting on his mother's bedside. Rachel placed her hand on her nephew's shoulder. Mommy will surely be back soon. Don't worry. But her own worry only deepened. If Emily had left home deliberately, why had she entrusted Jacob to her? And why had she left without saying anything to Michael? On the second night, Rachel called her friend Sarah. Sarah was also close to Emily, and she thought there might be some clue. About Emily? I haven't seen her recently, but I think she seemed normal at the mothers' group meeting last month, Sarah said. But thinking about it, she seemed to have lost weight lately. We were talking about whether she might be under stress. Stress? From what? I don't know, but she somehow seemed listless. Usually she's chatty, but that day she was quiet. After hanging up, Rachel observed Jacob's behavior more carefully. He was quieter than usual and sometimes looked out the window anxiously. It was as if he was waiting for someone or being wary of someone. On the morning of the third day, Michael called again. Rachel, still no contact from Emily? I'm thinking of filing a report with the police. The police? Isn't that a bit extreme? She's probably at a friend's, Rachel started to say and stopped. She remembered that Emily didn't have that many close friends. It's been 3 days since she disappeared. It'll be too late if something has happened. I understand. If there's anything I can do to help. Thank you so much for taking care of Jacob. I'm sorry for the trouble. Don't worry about it. Jake is a good boy. However, after hanging up, Rachel was struck by complex emotions. Michael sounded like a worried husband, but something was bothering her. She couldn't get Emily's words to Jacob about keeping it secret from Daddy out of her head. That afternoon, Rachel went for a walk to the nearby park with Jacob. Sitting on a swing, her nephew suddenly spoke up. Aunt Rachel, I know Mommy is scared. Rachel turned around in surprise. Scared? Of what? Jacob swung his legs back and forth while answering in a small voice. When Daddy gets angry, Mommy gets really scared. I get scared too. Those words made Rachel's heart race. Does Daddy yell at Mommy? Yes. In the middle of the night, loudly. Mommy is always crying. Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes. I want to help Mommy, but I don't know what to do. Rachel hugged her nephew. She felt like the reason for Emily's sudden disappearance was finally becoming clear. But she still didn't have proof. If Michael was being violent toward his wife, why hadn't Emily consulted anyone? Why had she kept it all to herself? That night, Rachel couldn't sleep and spent time in the living room. Jacob had fallen asleep early from exhaustion. While worrying about Emily's safety, she also blamed herself for missing signs that might have been there. Emily's recent changes, her weight loss, the anxious expressions she sometimes showed, all of these might have been signs asking for help. Rachel felt she had to take some action. Having heard Jacob's testimony, she could no longer dismiss this as a simple case of running away. If Emily was really in a dangerous situation, she had to find her as soon as possible. But not knowing where to start, Rachel was overwhelmed by a deep sense of helplessness. On the fourth night, Rachel was battling the anxiety in her chest while cleaning up Jacob's dinner in the kitchen. There was still no contact from her sister, and calls from Michael had become several times a day. His voice was growing more irritated each day, and Rachel's conviction that something was wrong deepened. "Aunt Rachel, let's watch TV together." Jacob sat on the living room sofa and beckoned to Rachel. Of course, Rachel sat next to her nephew and began watching his favorite cartoon with him. But Jacob wasn't concentrating on the program as usual. He occasionally looked anxiously out the window and let out small sighs. After 8 in the evening, Jacob suddenly put down the TV remote and turned around. "Aunt Rachel," his voice was more serious than usual. "What, Jake?" "I know where Mommy went." Rachel's heart leaped. "What? Really?" Jacob nodded slightly. Tears were welling up in his eyes. "But she told me to keep it secret. From Daddy and from you too." "Jake, this is important. Tell me where Mommy is." Rachel gently took her nephew's hand. Jacob hesitated a little, then began speaking in a trembling voice. "Mommy's place is a place where she's hiding from Daddy." "Hiding?" "Yes. Mommy was really scared. When Daddy gets angry, he hits Mommy. I saw it too." Jacob's voice became even smaller. "The other day, Daddy grabbed Mommy's arm really hard, and Mommy cried. When I tried to stop him, Daddy yelled at me." Rachel gasped. Her intuition had been right. But hearing that truth actually come from Jacob's mouth brought up anger along with deep sadness. "Jake, where is Mommy now?" "I don't know. But Mommy hid a recording in my portable game." Jacob stood up and took a small game device from his backpack. "Mommy said that if anything happened, I should listen to this." Rachel received the game device with trembling hands. When Jacob operated it, the recording function opened and Emily's voice began to play. "Jake, if you're listening to Mommy's voice, something must have happened to me. Mommy loves you. And to protect you, I have to make a very scary decision right now." Emily's voice was shaking. In the background, sounds of something falling and a man's shouting could be heard. "Michael is sick. He hurts Mommy and he's trying to hurt you too. But Mommy will never let that happen. If I disappear, play this recording for Aunt Rachel. Your aunt is someone we can trust." The recording continued. "Mommy is going to a safe place for women. But if Michael finds me, you'll be in danger too. So stay with your aunt for a while. Call the police and play this recording for them. Help will definitely come." Finally, Emily's sobbing could be heard, and the recording cut off. Rachel hugged Jacob while tears streamed down her cheeks. "Jake, thank you for telling me. Mommy is a smart person. She's trying to protect you. Is Mommy okay?" Jacob asked anxiously. "She'll definitely be okay. But we need to call for help right now." Rachel stood up to get Jacob's jacket. "Jake, we're going to the police now." "Me too." "Of course. Your testimony is the most important thing. To help Mommy, you need to tell the police officers the truth." While driving, Rachel reflected on the past few months. The unnatural bruises Emily sometimes showed, how she'd started wearing long sleeves more often, how she'd become thinner and more nervous than before, all of these had been signs of domestic violence. But Rachel, even though she'd noticed, hadn't pursued it deeply. She'd been waiting for her sister to come to her for advice. "Aunt Rachel, is Daddy a bad person?" Jacob asked in a small voice from the back seat. "Daddy is sick, Jake. But that's no excuse for hurting Mommy or you. No adult should ever use violence. When Mommy was crying, what should I have done? You did nothing wrong." You were brave for trying to protect mommy. But this is a problem that adults have to solve. When they arrived at the police station, a female officer at the desk welcomed them warmly. Rachel explained the situation and played the recording that Jacob had. The officer's expression gradually became serious. This is clearly a case of domestic violence. I'll call a detective who specializes in this right away. The female officer spoke gently to Jacob. You were very brave. You told us something important to help mommy. While waiting in the waiting room, Jacob was leaning against Rachel. Will I be able to see mommy? I'm sure you will. The police officers will definitely find her, Rachel answered while stroking her nephew's hair. When the detective appeared, questioning began. Jacob was nervous at first, but responding to the gentle questions from the female detective, he spoke in detail about what had been happening at home. His father's violence, his mother's injuries, and the fierce argument he'd heard on the last night. Your mother most likely took refuge in a women's shelter, the detective explained. For safety reasons, the shelter's location is kept secret, but we can confirm whether your mother is safe. Really? Rachel was relieved. Yes. We'll make contact first thing tomorrow morning. And we'll also begin an investigation into Michael Johnson. If he's really committing domestic violence, he needs to be arrested. When leaving the police station, Rachel held a deep resolve. Protect her sister, protect Jacob, and make sure this kind of tragedy never happens again. Family isn't just about blood relations. It's the bond between people who can support each other when it really matters. In the car, Jacob showed a peaceful expression. Aunt Rachel, thank you. I did the right thing, didn't I? Yes, Jake. You were really brave. Your mommy is surely proud of you too. Rachel drove quietly. The next morning, Rachel headed to the police station early. Since Jacob was sleeping from exhaustion, she left him with her close neighbor friend Sarah. Detective Margaret Wilson had already begun investigating Emily's whereabouts. Ms. Rachel, regarding your sister, let me start with the good news, Detective Wilson began speaking while looking at documents. Emily is safe. She's been under protection at the women's shelter, Safe Haven, in the city for 4 days. Rachel was so relieved that she involuntarily leaned back in her chair. Really? Is she injured? Physically, she had minor bruising, but no major injuries. However, the psychological shock is serious. She appears to have been subjected to long-term psychological abuse and physical violence. Detective Wilson took out another document. According to the shelter counselor, Emily had been receiving continuous domestic violence for the past 2 years. Michael Johnson strictly monitored his wife's behavior and also restricted her contact with friends and family. But why didn't Emily consult anyone? Rachel's chest ached with self-blame. As is common with many DV victims, shame, fear, and psychological control by the perpetrator prevent them from seeking help. In Emily's case, Michael had threatened her, saying, "If you tell anyone, I'll kill you and your son." Rachel gasped. She had never imagined that her sister had been living under such serious threats. Furthermore, Michael has wide connections in the local construction industry and has acquaintances among police officers. Emily had once reported domestic trouble before, but the responding officer was Michael's acquaintance and handled it as a marital dispute. After that, Michael's retaliation became more severe. Detective Wilson opened another file. Through our investigation, new facts about Michael's past conduct have also come to light. The reason for his divorce from his previous wife was also domestic violence, but it was covered up at the time. Also, similar damage reports had been filed by multiple women. So Emily married such a man without knowing. Michael hid his violence for the first few years. But starting around the 3rd year of marriage, he gradually became controlling, and from the 5th year on, the violence escalated. Rachel's chest tightened thinking of her sister's suffering. Can I see Emily? Of course. However, due to shelter rules, visits are conducted carefully. Emily also wants to see her sister. That afternoon, Rachel visited the women's shelter Safe Haven. The building's location was kept secret and protected by strict security. Counselor Linda Smith guided her. Emily hardly slept for 4 days. She was worried about her son's safety, Smith explained. But last night the police contacted her, and when she learned that Jacob was safe, she calmed down a little. The sister she reunited with in the visiting room looked like a different person from the Emily that Rachel remembered. Her cheeks were hollow, she had circles under her eyes, and faint marks could be seen on her left wrist. But when she saw her sister, Emily's eyes filled with tears. Rachel. Emily called her sister's name in a trembling voice. The two embraced silently. Rachel felt her sister's thin body while regretting that she should have noticed sooner. "How's Jake? Is he okay?" Emily asked worriedly. "He's fine. He was very worried about you, but he was brave. He delivered the recording message you left to the police." Emily showed a relieved expression. "I made that child carry a heavy burden. But there was no other way. Why didn't you consult me earlier?" Rachel held her sister's hand. "I was ashamed. And Michael." Emily's voice broke. "Michael threatened that if I told anyone, he would harm you too. I didn't want to get you involved. I'm your sister. We should have gotten through this together." Emily continued speaking while crying. "At first, he just got in bad moods sometimes. But it gradually got worse. He forbade me from contacting my friends and started disliking when I met with you. My cell phone was checked, and my actions were monitored. What happened 4 days ago? Michael flew into a rage and seemed about to hit Jake too. That's when I thought I'd reached my limit. That night, while Michael was drunk and asleep, I tried to escape with Jake, but..." Emily continued trembling. "Michael woke up and tried to drag me back. The struggle at that time is what's recorded. How did you manage to escape?" Jake was quick thinking and opened the front door and called loudly for help. The neighbors noticed, and in the moment when Michael hesitated, we were able to escape. Rachel was moved again by her nephew's bravery. She was struck by the action of a 7-year-old child trying to protect his mother. That evening, Detective Wilson contacted her. It was news that Michael had been arrested at his workplace. He was arrested on charges of domestic violence, threats, and stalking. Also, reinvestigation of past incidents has begun, the detective explained. With Emily's and Jacob's testimony, and the recorded evidence, prosecution is certain. Did Michael admit to it? At first he denied it, but when confronted with evidence, he admitted to part of it. However, he claims it was within the range of discipline. Rachel felt anger but also relief. Now her sister and nephew would be safe. We're also applying for a protection order at the same time. Michael will be legally obligated to maintain a certain distance from Emily and Jacob. That night, Rachel had dinner with Jacob at home while telling him about his mother's safety. A smile returned to Jacob's face for the first time in a while. "Can I see Mommy?" "Of course. Tomorrow, let's go see Mommy together." "What will happen to Daddy?" Jacob asked worriedly. "Daddy will receive treatment at the hospital. Since violence is wrong, he'll properly receive punishment and treatment," Rachel explained gently. "But he won't be able to hurt you and Mommy anymore." Jacob showed a relieved expression. "I want to be with Mommy and Aunt Rachel." "Yes. Let's start a new life," Rachel hugged Jacob. 6 months later, bright sunlight was streaming into Rachel's new apartment. The 2-bedroom apartment they'd moved to for the 3 of them to live together had become the starting point of a new life for Emily and Jacob. Michael Johnson was found guilty of domestic violence, threats, and stalking, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. At the trial, Emily's courageous testimony and the evidence that Jacob had recorded played a decisive role. Furthermore, past victims also came forward, revealing the reality of Michael's years of violence. "Mommy, look. My drawing," Jacob showed Emily the picture he'd been drawing at the living room table. It depicted 3 smiling figures holding hands and standing together. "It's wonderful, Jake. Who's in the drawing?" Emily sat next to her son. Color had returned to her previously gaunt face, and her eyes held a lively sparkle. Mommy and me and Aunt Rachel. Our new family. Rachel smiled from the kitchen. You drew it very well. Emily was attending psychological counselor sessions twice a week. For the first few months, she was troubled by nightmares and would sometimes tremble at sudden sounds. But through professional care and family support, she gradually recovered. She had now also begun volunteer work with a domestic violence victim support organization. Today I had an interview with a new client, Emily reported to Rachel. A woman in her 20s who's in a situation similar to what mine was. That must be difficult? But it's rewarding. If my experience can help other people, Emily smiled quietly. If Rachel hadn't taken me to the police at that time, we wouldn't be where we are today. Rachel's life had also changed greatly. Her work as a freelance designer was going well, and living together with Emily and Jacob brought new joy. The quiet days of living alone hadn't been bad, but the lively time spent with family had a different kind of warmth. Aunt Rachel, how about having a picnic in the park this weekend? Jacob suggested. That's a good idea. If the weather is nice, let's go, Rachel answered. After dinner, the three relaxed in the living room watching TV. Jacob had completely adapted to his new school and had made friends. At first, he was confused about explaining his father to his classmates, but with help from the school counselor, he could now talk about it naturally. Mommy, when is Daddy coming back? It was a question Jacob asked from time to time. Not for a long time still. Daddy is receiving treatment at the hospital. He's getting his heart healed so he won't be violent anymore, Emily explained carefully. When Daddy gets better, will we live together again? Emily and Rachel looked at each other. It was a difficult problem they had discussed several times. We don't know yet, Jake. But right now, the most important thing is that the three of us can live happily together. Jacob nodded slightly. In his 7-year-old way, he was trying to understand the complex situation. After the bedtime story reading, Rachel and Emily were talking over tea in the kitchen. Thank you so much, Rachel. Without you, I don't know what would have happened to us. We're family, so it's only natural, Rachel held her sister's hand. But you were the bravest one. On that last night, you were the one who took action to protect Jake. The idea to leave that recording was for if something happened to Jake. As a mother, I wanted to do the last thing I could. And that's what brought us together. Outside the window, the city lights were shining gently. The sound of cars heard from far away no longer felt like the fear of before, but like part of daily life. What do you want to do from now on? Rachel asked her sister. I want to continue the volunteer work and someday stand on my own feet. For Jake's sake too, I want to become a strong mother. You're already strong enough. Because you're here with me, Emily smiled. Real family isn't just about blood relations. It's the bond between people who can support each other in times of trouble. Rachel smiled back. Looking back on the difficult days of the past 6 months, they had also been precious time that deepened the bond between the three of them. The truth was revealed, justice was served, and a new form of family was born. Good night, Emily. Good night, Rachel. That night, all three fell into peaceful sleep. Tomorrow would bring another new day. There would be difficulties, but there was no longer any need to bear them alone. They had family to support each other. That was the most precious treasure of all.